So I welcome you all to this second session, second or third probably, of abnormal psychology. And today we are going to continue from where we left last time. So before we begin, I kind of hope and expect, you guys being psychology students must have heard of DSM and ICD-10. So can you guys tell me what is DSM, what is ICD-10, why do we use them, who uses them, whatever you guys know about this? Any idea?
And people who are studying psychiatry, they use this manual. Sorry, book.
Then, okay. Then why do you think we as psychologists are studying this thing? Does anyone else has this idea?
I think to get the basic idea of mental illness. If it is severe, then we can transfer them to psychiatry.
Okay. What about others? What do you think, Priyanka? DSM and ICD?
No, ma'am, no idea. Sorry.
Okay. Priyanka, do you have any idea?
No, ma'am. Sorry.
Oh, all right, no problem. I'll tell you. So, disorders. Okay, human beings, even as we talk.
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
Voice is breaking. Is it? Okay. Is it now? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, yes, there are a large number of disorders, right? And irrespective of who uses that, first of all, I want to give you an idea of what this thing actually is. Okay. So, there are a huge number of mental disorders, just like there are n number of diseases in the world, right? So, it's very hard. अगर मैं आपको randomly, first day I'm teaching you fever and next day I'm teaching you anatomy of heart and third day I'm teaching you something about, your limbs. So you may get confused, isn't it? So that is why, similarly, जैसे physical disorders होते हैं and there is a lot of variety in physical disorders. Similarly, mental disorders भी, there are a lot of mental disorders. Okay. अब मैं randomly हर एक disorder उठा के आपको पढ़ाना शुरू कर दूं तो you may get confused, you may get puzzled, isn't it? And say if two psychologists or two psychiatrists are communicating about a certain person, है ना? तो अब आपने देखा होगा कि even the names of the things, they vary from one place to another. Okay, so maybe India में we call a particular thing as something, है ना? And probably abroad, east में कुछ और कहते होंगे, west में कुछ और कहते होंगे, है ना? So names of the things, they vary. So when discussing about psychological disorders, अब हम जैसे water, तो कि कहीं कोई लोग उसको कह देते हैं पानी, कोई नीर कह देते हैं, कोई जल कह देते हैं. There are n numbers of names for everything. But when we talk about disorders and psychiatrists, we also know कि है ना, sometimes when a certain doctor is not able to handle a particular patient, so they refer him to the other client, other patient. They refer their clients. आपने देखा होगा कि sometimes you go to the hospital and doctor says that this particular disease is not manageable here, and they would refer it to some other doctor. Now imagine, this doctor has given some diagnosis, okay, and this other doctor, he probably does not know what this disorder, what disorder this doctor is referring to. मतलब ये कह रहा है कि आई एम इन नीड ऑफ जल एंड दिस person may say neer. So we both know that the meaning of both the words is same, but maybe there could be some miscommunication on the basis of the names that they are using. I would not confuse you anymore. I'll get straight to the point. हम diagnostic manuals क्यों use करते हैं? We want that, you know, to psychiatrists, to clinical psychologists, or to physicians, social worker, or anybody, you know, whoever is referring to mental disorders, वो दो लोग आपस में communicate कर सकें. And when they communicate, they should know that they both are talking about the same disorder. Both of them can see the same symptoms, so both of them should refer it as the same name. Okay, so earlier ऐसा नहीं होता था, because you know, अगर आपने 9th 10th में, if you remember, आपने nomenclature पढ़ा होगा. So with these manuals we, you know, give a standardized names to the disorders. Additionally, as I was telling you कि इतनी variety है disorders की, अगर मैं randomly हर एक disorder पढ़ाऊंगी, एक दिन मैं OCD ले लूं, अगले दिन मैं depression ले लूं, third day I'm taking panic disorder, you know, I'm taking randomly disorders, तो आप लोग बहुत confuse हो जाओगे. Not only you, even when physicians are diagnosing something, तो उनको भी तो थोड़ी ease होनी चाहिए ना when they're diagnosing something. तो उसके लिए they created these manuals. One of them is DSM-5. 5 is the 5th edition. Okay. And the other one is ICD. Okay. This is in its 10th edition. So I'll tell you. Yes. So there is a huge list of disorders. अब DSM-5 और ICD-10 ये दोनों मैनुअल्स के नाम हैं. ठीक है. ये क्या करते हैं कि जो डिसऑर्डर्स एक जैसे लगते हैं उनकी एक कैटेगरी बना देते हैं. तो इसमें जो सारे डिसऑर्डर्स है ना, उनकी लिस्ट है, बट इस तरीके से कि इट इज इन द फॉर्म ऑफ कैटेगरीज, सो दैट जब आप स्टडी कर रहे हो तो यू नो कि हाँ अब मैं एंजाइटी डिसऑर्डर्स पढ़ रहा हूँ, या अब मैं यू नो a particular kind of just type of disorders, that I am studying a type, a particular section of the disorders. All right. So this is what these DSM-5 and ICD-10 does. Now the things that you need to remember and know is कि इसका usage क्या है. And you know, DSM-5 और ICD-10, अब हमने classification देनी थी, सबको common code देना था, and then why did we, you know, come up with two manuals rather than one? So the reason behind this is कि DSM-5, it is an international classification of disorders. Okay. Sorry, no, it is not international. I spoke incorrectly. This is given by American Psychiatric Association. Okay, so DSM-5 stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. DSM की full form है ये Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And since it is in its 5th edition, इस वजह से इसको जो है 5 साथ में लिखा गया. तो इसकी पहले 1st edition आई थी, फिर 2nd आई थी, 3rd आई थी, then they got revised, then 4th, then you know 4th got revised, and currently we are, you know, in DSM-5 R. R का मतलब revised. We are using the revised version of DSM-5 currently. Okay. And ICD-10, ICD stands for International Classification of Mental and Behavioral Disorders. Okay, you should know its full form. DSM-5 किसने दी थी? American Psychiatric Association ने. ICD-10 किसने दी है? WHO ने, World Health Organization. You all must have heard of WHO. Now, due to the pandemic, अब तो सबने ही WHO को सुन लिया होगा. WHO is an organization, you know, which is responsible for, it is the World Health Organization. So all the domains of health come under WHO. So you guys can obviously guess कि this is by American Psychiatric Association. So this is more prevalent in US, America. Okay, ये अमेरिका में ज्यादा यूज होती है. But this is a quite bulky, you know, book. काफी bulky है ये manual. मतलब इसमें everything has been given in a very good detail. इसलिए साइकेट्रिस्ट या साइकोलॉजिस्ट इसको भी स्टडी करते हैं टू गेट अ मोर इन डेप्थ नॉलेज ऑफ दिस ऑफ एनी डिजीज. ICD-10 में जो है इट इज गिवन बाय वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. तो नाम से ही पता लग रहा है वर्ल्ड. दैट मीन्स मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल इन द वर्ल्ड, okay, most of the countries, most of the psychologists throughout the countries, nations, they use ICD-10. Currently we are in the 10th revision, 10th edition of ICD. ICD-11 is going to come very soon. Okay, so इंडिया में अब आप बताओ, इंडिया में हम DSM-5 यूज कर रहे हैं या ICD-10 यूज कर रहे हैं? ज्यादा कौन सी यूज कर रहे होंगे?
Maybe DSM-5.
क्यों?
I think it's
Why?
ICD-10.
ओके, जिसको ICD लगता है वो क्यों? और DSM वाले बताओ DSM क्यों? Why?
ICD because it's like global, na? Like all over the world. So maybe इसीलिए.
And who said DSM and why?
DSM क्योंकि ज्यादातर जो साइकोलॉजी कंसेप्ट से जो रिलेटेड होता है वो ऑथराइज्ड ऐसा जो कुछ लेते हैं वो APA का लेते हैं, इसीलिए बिकॉज इट्स बाय APA.
Okay. So, APA is American Psychiatric Association, and you're kind of correct, but nahi. Globally, we use ICD-10. India also comes in the globe, though America also comes in the globe, but we use ICD-10 more. हम बच्चों को कहते हैं कि आप DSM-5 पढ़ो so that they can get an in-depth knowledge. But when you go to psychiatrists, when you go to clinical psychologists, they use ICD-10. Another doubt that, another thing that Rahul was telling, I guess. Rahul, am I taking the name correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Okay. So, it is not only used by psychiatrists, it is also used by clinical psychologists. So it is not only limited to psychiatrists. Clinical psychologists also are, they are trained to make the diagnosis. तो वो लोग भी इसको study भी करते हैं और इसको use भी करते हैं. Even we are taught, you guys are also going to study disorders. The final semester students of bachelor's as well as master's students who opt for clinical psychology, psychopathology, they also study these. And we don't just study them for knowledge. If you are a RCI registered clinical psychologist in India, you are trained to diagnose people. So it is not only limited to psychiatrists. ओके, हम सिर्फ नॉलेज के लिए नहीं पढ़ते हैं, हम इसकी थेरेपीज पढ़ते हैं, सब कुछ पढ़ते हैं हम, यहाँ तक कि हमें न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर से लेके कौन से इनको मेडिसिन दी जाती है उसका भी थोड़ा सा आइडिया देते हैं. क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट कैन नॉट प्रिस्क्राइब मेडिसिन, but yes, they are well equipped to diagnose the disorders in people. Additionally, they are also well equipped to provide therapies. I'm not talking about psychologists, I'm talking about clinical psychologists. Okay. So yes, this is about DSM-5 and ICD-10. You guys should remember it. हम इंडिया में ICD-10 use करते हैं because it is globally, accepted. And we need these classifications to make things easier for diagnosis. We need them so that, everybody remains on the same page. अगर कोई person इंडिया में रिसर्च कर रहा है और कोई person यूरोप में रिसर्च कर रहा है, they both can read each other's studies and they can understand what both of them are talking about. Okay, and they both can contribute in each other's studies. So वो तभी possible होगा if they both are referring to the same thing with the same name, and that is provided by DSM-5 and ICD-10. Okay. ऑल्सो यू नीड टू नो कि इसमें अब दिया क्या हुआ है. अब इसमें आपको ट्रीटमेंट नहीं दिया हुआ चीजों का, इसमें आपको मेन क्लिनिकल फीचर्स दिए हुए हैं कि ये डिसऑर्डर होता कैसा है, व्हाट आर द सिम्टम्स दैट यू नीड टू लुक फॉर, और दे विल गिव यू अ लिस्ट ऑफ सिम्टम्स एंड दे विल टेल यू कि इसमें से अगर इतने सिम्टम्स हैं देन यू कैन डायग्नोज दिस पर्सन विद दिस पर्टिकुलर डिसऑर्डर. सो डायग्नोस्टिक क्राइटेरिया भी दिया हुआ है.
मैम वर्षा या मैम ये काउंसलर यूज कर सकते हैं ना थ्रू यूजिंग दिस DSM-5 and ICD-10 to know the
Counselors cannot make the diagnosis. आप diagnose नहीं कर सकते. Pardon?
Symptoms understand connect the counselor can read this na book DSM.
Read तो anybody can read this. Anybody can buy it from Amazon or anywhere, and you can read it, of course. But you know, अब क्यों चाहिए होता है clinical psychologist भी? There are people who suffer from intellectual disability or maybe any particular disorder. Okay, and that particular disorder, it disables those people from certain amenities of life, isn't it? So
Right.
for example, अब कोई पर्सन है, उसकी IQ थोड़ी सी कम है, तो वो उतने अच्छे से नहीं सोसाइटी में सरवाइव कर पाएगा जितने अच्छे से बाकी लोग. So there is a certain reservation or certain stipend or something that is given by government to these people. तो उस diagnosis के लिए we need that, you know, they should be diagnosed by the clinical psychologists. Did you get my point? Clinical psychologist or the psychiatrist. So that diagnosis can only be made by these people. That cannot be made by the psychologists. जब abnormality की बात आ जाती है ना, तो उसमें counselors और psychologists are not enough. We need clinical psychologists or psychiatrists.
Okay.
Did I? Yes.
Ma'am, yes, got it.
If there is still any doubt, you can ask.
No, ma'am, clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other doubts in diagnostic manuals?
Ma'am, I want to know regarding the content part. Is the content same in both the books or they are different?
Okay. So the content in both the books is nearly similar, but इन दोनों का diagnostic criteria थोड़ा सा different हो जाता है. इनके codes थोड़े से different हो जाते हैं. DSM-5 की coding अलग है, ICD-10 की coding अलग है. Okay, and classification criteria is also different. And as I told you, the DSM-5 is more elaborate. ICD-10 is not that elaborate. इसलिए it is very handy. तो बहुत छोटी सी book है of around 300 pages I guess. तो easily readable है ICD-10. वहीं आप DSM-5 पढ़ोगे तो उसका size भी बड़ा है, उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा researches भी. Okay, so it is not well equipped. अगर आपको immediately किसी person को diagnose करना है तो ICD-10 is handy. Okay, and yes, disorders are same. Classification differs, but disorders are same. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody, anything that is not clear या कुछ confused हो गया?
Oh, ma'am, clear.
Ma'am,
Okay,
I have one more
perfect.
question. Ma'am, regarding the research part, so in DSM-5, like the content which are available is been only researched by American people or by people whoever can like do research and put their content in DSM-5?
Anybody can do research, but this thing is being published in America. American Psychiatric Association के जो लोग हैं, they decide what should be in this thing. Research तो everybody can do, but उस research में से कौन सा part इस manual का part बनेगा या नहीं बनेगा, वो American Psychiatric Association decide करती है. APA. आप APA के member भी बन सकते हो. You can become a student member or according to your whatever qualifications. So APA की website you can visit there and you can see if you want to become the member. But as such association का member बनना and DSM-5 में contribute करना, I think that needs a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill, a lot of education also. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Research सभी करते हैं. Research bachelors के बच्चे भी करते हैं. They all do. They all write research papers. But what would be contributed, what would be added in this manual is said by APA. और ICD में क्या जाना है वो WHO की associations है, वो decide करती है. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other queries? Okay. All right. Let's move ahead. So today we are going to discuss a very, something that might, make you guys also curious. Ki how is it that, some people start acting abnormally out of blue? एकदम से कैसे हो जाता है कि, probably two people, their brother and sister, or maybe somebody you saw was doing absolutely fine, how come all of a sudden that person has started behaving normally? तो उसने कहीं से सीखा है या already he was born with that thing, maybe those are the circumstances of life, है ना? So now you guys tell me, आपको क्या लगता है कि what could be the reasons why do we behave abnormally?
Some environmental factors.
It might be genetic, like it gets triggered by the environment, like something that was present in the person from birth and it got triggered by the environment.
Okay, that's one. What other reasons could be there?
Maybe the life circumstances.
Yes, life circumstances, biological reasons, and
might be some part of brain is not working. That might be there.
Some part of brain is not working. Okay. Varsha, Yukta, Priyanka, who has like tribute? ठीक है, जो आपने बिल्कुल सही था. Both of you.
Some environmental factors.
Okay, some environmental factors can also be there. That's true. Okay, so let us try to discuss some psychological factors can also be there, isn't it? We are studying psychology, right? So let us study in detail, okay, कि कौन से ऐसे factors हैं which actually contribute in abnormal behavior. Why do people start behaving abnormally? So as you guys very rightly said that there could be some biological factors, or there could be socio-cultural factors, which you said environmental factors, and there are psychological factors as well. We are studying psychology, so we should not forget it. Okay, so we'll start biological factors. अब biological factors में भी दो तरीके की चीजें हो सकती हैं. एक तो Rahul mentioned that probably some part of brain of that person is not working properly. Okay, that is brain dysfunctions. What other reasons could be there? Great. I am hoping that you guys have studied about neurons, neurotransmitters. Pardon?
Your voice is big.
Okay.
Your voice is not clear.
Is it better?
Ma'am, it's not clear.
It's not clear. Okay. Now, is it better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank God. All right. So I'm hoping that all of you must have studied about the structure of neuron, probably in your 11th standard. And if not in your 11th standard, we have definitely studied about it in our 9th or 10th standard. So we have all read that neurons release some neurotransmitters, and those neurotransmitters perform one or the other function in our body. Right? So the biological factors can be of certain kinds. One, brain dysfunctions, which Rahul mentioned. Second, now biology consists of several things. It could be that the neurotransmitters that are released by the neurons are, not working properly. Either they are being released more than they should be, or they are being released in the less quantity. Okay. And third one could be, genetic factors. It's possible that, there are many of the disorders have been linked to this thing. Probably if somebody in the family had a certain, disorder, then it is passed on to the siblings and passed on to the children and other coming future generations. This has been linked in schizophrenia. It is also in anxiety disorders, just like diabetes. We say that if one of the parent has diabetes, so we see कि उनके आने वाली generations are more prone to diabetes, and that's why they are recommended that they should live a healthy lifestyle. They should exercise more often, and they should restrain themselves from eating more sweet things. Isn't it? Similarly, it works in psychology also. So when I say psychological disorders, abnormal disorders, and specifically biological factors in abnormal disorders. Just a minute. So what am I referring to? I'm referring to something that can be genetic. So probably somebody's parents, grandparents, somebody had this disorder, उनमें ये प्रॉब्लम थी, and it is passed on to their coming future generations, and it happens. Okay, you might have heard it in your own community also कि लोगों के साथ ये चीज होती है. If somebody the parents or maybe the grandparents had a certain disorder, maybe Parkinson's or anything, the children and their coming future generations are more prone to it. This is the first category of biological factors. Second one we talked about was brain dysfunctions. Now brain dysfunctions could be by birth. Okay, certain part of the brain of a person is not working properly. Another could be that maybe in some accident or through some brain injury, that person has lost some part of the brain, and that is why it's not working properly. Did I? Okay, am I audible? I thought I got disconnected.
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Are you guys able to hear? Okay,
Yes.
all right. Thank God. I thought I'm speaking to myself. Okay, so it's possible that person, got that brain injury through some accident during his life course, or maybe it was by birth. Third thing that I'm telling you about is that something that you've probably studied in your, 7th grade, 8th grade, or, maybe in your +1 also, there's a chapter for neurons. So maybe the function that neurons should perform, right? Neurons, they are responsible for so many things in your body, and maybe they are not performing that function properly. So आपकी बॉडी को जो मैसेजेस जाने चाहिए वो अच्छे से नहीं पहुंच रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से it is not functioning properly. So neurons release neurotransmitters. I will not go very much in depth into the biology, because biology of neurons, because that is not in your +2 syllabus, it is in your +1 syllabus. So I'll stick to this only. So neurons release neurotransmitters. There are n number of neurotransmitters that are released in your body. These are a few of them: GABA, dopamine, and serotonin. Do you know what GABA stands for? Anyone?
No.
Nobody knows? Okay. GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. GAMMA gamma, AMINO amino, butyric 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 acid, ACID. Okay, so this is one of the neurotransmitters that is released in your brain, in your body. Okay, so now everything has to be in a certain proportion in your body. ठीक है, आपको एक certain hours की sleep चाहिए, certain hours of food. Similarly, the functions that your body is performing should be in a certain quantity. Now you see, you must have seen yourself, है ना? We perspire, or maybe our heartbeat, it is 80, 120, 180, I think, है ना? So whatever it is, so it has to be in a certain manner, है ना? अगर वो बहुत ज्यादा हो जाती है, so we know कि it is going to cause complications in your body if your heartbeat is more than usual, or if it is less than usual, even then it is going to cause disorders or some disability in your body. It is going to make you feel uncomfortable. We all sweat in summers, but we see that if a person is sweating in winters, or he's sweating more than usual, or he's not sweating at all, so these are also some symptoms that indicate some or the other disorder, isn't it? We all also know that we need a certain amount of sleep every day. If a person sleeps more than often, we can guess that there is probably something wrong with this person. Either he's too lazy, or maybe he is not happy in his life and he wants to avoid certain kind of situation, right? Or even that the food we eat, isn't it? So we also see that there are so many eating disorders also. If a person eats too less, maybe that is also indicating some disease. Or if a person is binge eating, that is a certain kind of disorder. So why am I telling you so many things? What is my point here? What am I going to try to relate here with neurotransmitters is कि हमारी body में जो neurotransmitters release होते हैं, there is a certain quantity in which these neurotransmitters should be released. Now, if this quantity exceeds, even then it is going to cause trouble in your body. And if that quantity is released in a very less quantity, it is released less than what it should be, even then it is going to cause trouble. Now, so if you would have some, diabetic person you're known, so you would be knowing that insulin is something that is released by body in its own. But जब वो insulin body नहीं release करती है, the glands in our body does not release that, it causes some trouble. तो आपको वो बाहर से inject करना पड़ता है. Similarly, what psychiatrists do is what, if this is being released in a lesser quantity, they will try to give it to you from the outside, or if it is being released in a greater quantity, they will give you something that will inhibit the release of these neurotransmitters. So, अगर neurotransmitter कम quantity में release हो रहा है, even then it can cause some or the other disorder. अगर वो ज़्यादा quantity than usual, then required में release हो रहा है, even then it is going to cause some disorder. Now, for your board exam, you need to remember 3 of these. It is possible that they will ask you in 1 mark question or whatsoever कि कौन सा neurotransmitter किसके लिए responsible है, वो ज़्यादा release होता है या कम. So only 3 are mentioned in your NCERT book, and these 3 are most important. Okay. So अगर GABA आपके body में it is being released in a lesser quantity than it is required, it may lead to anxiety. Okay, we will be discussing all these disorders in depth abhi aane wale sessions mein. So if you don't know what anxiety, schizophrenia or depression is, I can totally understand. We will be studying in depth about all of this. So if GABA is being released in a lesser quantity, it may lead to anxiety. If dopamine is being released in more quantity, it may lead to schizophrenia. And if serotonin is again being released in a lesser quantity, it will lead to depression. So you all can probably make some mnemonic to learn these things, but there are n number of disorders, n number of neurotransmitters, and n number of diseases linked to them. So this is not the only thing that you need to learn, but yes, you should know these 3 specifically. So GABA और serotonin इन दोनों के कम release होने की वजह से one can be prone to anxiety and depression. अगर dopamine बहुत ज़्यादा quantity में release होता है, it can lead to schizophrenia. Serotonin is one of the happy hormones. तो अगर serotonin, oxytocin, okay, अगर ये कम quantity में release हो रहा है, obviously the happy hormones in your body are being released in a lesser quantity. So it's very obvious that it will lead to depression, something that leads to immense sadness. Okay, so when you feel good about exercising and when you feel really happy, so it is your hormones talking. Or if you feel very sad, even so hormones have a lot to play in your body. So we discussed biological factors. I told you about 3 kind of biological factors. Can you tell me what did I teach you just now? कौन से 3 biological factors की बात करी मैंने?
Genetics.
Pardon?
Genetics.
Okay, genetics. Okay, just genetics. Rahul, what was the next one?
Neurotransmitter.
Okay, neurotransmitters. You took the easy one. And Priyanka, what's the third one?
Ma'am, can
Varsha? Yes, yes.
Ma'am, any kind of accidents, any kind of damage to the brain.
brain.
Yes, brain dysfunctions. Very good. Perfect. So now you guys know, agar aapko ye question aata hai, you can, I'm sure, very easily attempt. This is something that you need to learn. Okay. So I hope you will be easily able to do so. Okay. We'll take a little quiz in our next session about these neurotransmitters. Perfect. Shall we move ahead? Any doubts still here?
No, ma'am.
All right. So these are some of the disorders that I've listed, which have, in which genes have a role to play. So if somebody in the family has schizophrenia, your family members are prone to the same. Intellectual disability can also be similarly depression, anxiety, and bipolar related disorders. Okay. So next is psychological factors. What are the psychological factors that may lead to abnormal behavior?
Excuse me, ma'am. Can you bring the previous slide? I just want to see the genetic factors, like the disorders that are caused by genetics. I should just note it down.
Just a minute. You can take a screenshot maybe.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now let us study what are the psychological factors that can lead to abnormal behavior. We have you guys studied about, the schools of psychology? Do you have any idea about them? Anyone?
Structuralism, functionalism.
Yes, yes, yes. Have you studied them?
Freudians and non-Freudians. Schools of thought.
Okay, yes, right. And?
Gestalt psychology.
Gestalt, yes. Behaviorism, humanistic existential, all these are the schools of psychology. So I think the students of +2 have not studied this in your +1. Or maybe a part of it is in your first chapter, is it? Okay, anyways, so psychological models are usually, they are mostly linked to the psychological schools. So किस school ने किस तरीके से, they have tried to explain कि what could be the cause of a certain abnormal behavior. The other day I was telling you okay, forget it. So yeah, so certain schools, cognitive, humanistic, existential, behavioral, and psychodynamic, these are the names of the schools. And we are just going to briefly cover about how these schools have said what could be the reasons of a certain disorder. So psychodynamic is one of the very popular school of psychology. And I think that all of you must have heard the name of the person who gave the school of psychoanalysis.
Sigmund Freud, ma'am.
Yes, Sigmund Freud. Perfect. Very right. So Freud talked about things that, he gave his own theories. And when we talk about psychoanalysis or psychodynamic school of psychology, so we talk about things that are probably not very much observable. But when we read Freud, we find it very interesting and we are able to relate to the things that maybe things can be this way. Okay. So what does Freud majorly talks about? Do you guys know?
Subconscious.
Conscious, unconscious, and unconscious mind.
Very good. Correct. Yes. So Freud, as we all know, he talks about subconscious, unconscious, and conscious mind. So he says most of the things, they all lie in our unconscious part.
Conscious.
Isn't it?
Yes.
तो वो हम करते हैं हाँ unconscious में ये ऐसे iceberg करते हैं. So we say that 90% of the iceberg is unconscious. A little bit of it is subconscious, and only the tip of the iceberg, which is very less percent, 1 to 3%, that is your conscious part. So there are very less things which are in our conscious. There are so many things that are in our unconscious and subconscious. Okay, so when I first studied Freud, so harbari when I used to write the answer, तो मैं subconscious और unconscious को mix करके आ जाती थी. So I want to know if you guys know the difference between subconscious and unconscious. With an example also you can tell me कि subconscious क्या होगा और unconscious क्या होगा.
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, sure.
Like subconscious is something like it's in our mind, like it is in our mind, and like if some environmental factors or if like there is some information regarding, like if there is something that triggers the information, like we can remember it. And unconscious is something like we're unaware of, like we're totally unaware of the situation. Even if a situational factor is given to us, we are not able to remember the thing back. Like suppose
absolutely correct, perfectly correct.
Yeah. Like suppose in an examination,
yes,
if we have an answer to be remembered, like if we are given a certain hints of the answer, we can remember the answer back. So that is something that comes under subconscious. And unconscious is something like we have totally not read the answer, we don't know what's the content inside it, and even if we are given hints, we are not able to remember it or we are not able to write it.
Perfectly correct. Right. So, as Kangan told us, conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. What's the difference between these two? Was it Kangan or was it Varsha?
Not Kangan.
Okay, all right. Okay, I was correct. So, absolutely correct. Very well done. So, yes, conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. Unconscious is the dark zone of your mind which you are completely unaware of. Okay, so it could be trauma or some suppressed desires or memories, which you are not aware of at the moment at all. बिल्कुल ही नहीं पता है. Subconscious is something that, if you try to recall, it's not on your mind at this moment of time, because right now you're all busy listening to me and, delve deep into what psychoanalysis said. But if I, ask you, what has your mother cooked for dinner? And if it is something very pleasant, तो आपके दिमाग में एकदम से वो चीज आ जाएगी, isn't it? So it's not probably not running on your mind right now, but if I ask you, then you will be able to remember. So if I ask you, what did you have for breakfast today? So you'll be able to remember. Or who is your best friend? So right now your best friend is not on your mind. But when I ask you, when I give a trigger or give a stimulus, you are able to recall the information very easily. So that information is in your subconscious. Conscious is right now at this moment, right now, right here. Okay, things that you are conscious of, and there are so many things that are in your unconscious, and they keep delving in your unconscious. So according to Freud, the behavior, whether it is normal or it is abnormal, it doesn't matter, but it is determined by the psychological forces within the person, and that person may or may not be conscious of what is going on. Okay, the person can be aware of those forces inside him, or he may not be aware of those forces. Okay, and these forces, which psychological forces of which Freud is talking about, he says that these all forces in the person, they interact with each other, and when they interact with each other, they give rise to thoughts, emotions, and behavior in a person. But sometimes, these forces in a person, they they get into conflict, and when that conflict is not resolved, it leads to abnormality.
Ma'am, your voice
Okay,
is not
I gave you a
clear.
lot of.
Ma'am, your
Is it
voice is
better?
breaking.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better, but it gets breakdown in the middle. Like,
Okay, I try my best to have the best connection, but yes, I'll surely, I would repeat it. Okay, you can ask me to repeat whenever it breaks. All right. Am I
okay.
audible now? Is it better?
Yeah. You just repeat the last point.
Okay, I'll continue. Yes, I'll repeat last point. So, yes, I just gave you a little theory. I'll try to explain you in a little more detail what Freud said. So Freud said behavior, irrespective of the fact whether that behavior is normal or abnormal. So behavior normal है या abnormal है matter नहीं करता. Behavior आता कहाँ से है according to Freud. So according to Freud, there are certain forces in our body, and we have all studied about those forces. If you have not, I'm going to describe those forces to you right now. So he says, id, ego, and superego. Have you heard of this?
Yes, ma'am.
कहीं ना कहीं तो सुना ही होगा, अगर नहीं भी याद तो. id, ego, and superego, Freud talks about these things. ठीक है? So do you know what id, ego, and superego is? Anybody wants to tell?
It is like our desire, fantasy.
Ma'am, the
It
id
works
part
on
is
the
like
pleasure principle,
Yeah, present principle.
and ego is something is based on reality, and superego is something that's based on morality.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
You guys are already intelligent. Okay. So this is based on reality principle. This is based on moral principle. Okay. So फ्रॉइड कहते हैं कि हमारे सबके अंदर ये तीन फोर्सेस होते हैं जिनको हम इड, ईगो और सुपर ईगो कहते हैं. And three of these forces, we all have watched Tom and Jerry in our childhood. कोई भी नहीं होगा जिसने नहीं देखा होगा, irrespective of the fact अच्छा लगता था नहीं लगता था, ठीक है. So उसमें वो दिखाते थे ना, एक साइड पे there used to be a black mouse sitting and on the other side there used to be a white one, है ना. Do you guys remember?
Yes, ma'am.
So एक direct करता था नहीं, you do the bad thing, the other used to be like, no, this is absolutely wrong and you cannot do this way at all, and you have to abide by all the moral standards. No? So, the one which used to compel you that do the bad thing, do what you want to do and get what you want, that is your id. It works on your instincts. So instinctual needs and impulses, just like a little baby is. So for it does not matter, कि क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं. So if a child is stubborn and he wants something, he's at a shop, he will, show every damn tantrum in the world to do that thing, irrespective of the fact whether or not that thing is possible or not. So उसको सिर्फ अपनी बात मनवाने से मतलब है, उसको और किसी चीज से मतलब नहीं है. That is your id. Your superego is, it is what your parents or the society has taught you, कि this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. All of that is your superego. तो वो जो white वाला जो होता है ना, that is sitting on shoulder of Tom and Jerry, that is your superego. तो अब id और superego हमेशा एक दूसरे के opposite and they keep fighting. अब there are two teams who are going to fight, तो एक referee भी चाहिए. So this ego is the referee. ठीक है. तो अब ये इन दोनों की सुलह तो नहीं होती इन दोनों की, बट ये कहीं ना कहीं एक डिसीजन दे देता है लाइक अ जज, एंड इन दोनों को मनाने की कोशिश करते हैं. दैट इज योर ईगो. So Freud says that these are the forces that work within an individual. Okay, and these forces they interact. id, ego और super ego तीनों एक दूसरे से interact करते हैं. So with this interaction, our thoughts, our emotions and our behavior is generated. ओके, बट अब इंटरैक्शन हो रही है तो जरूरी तो नहीं है कि हर बार इंटरैक्शन अच्छी ही हो. समटाइम्स दिस इंटरैक्शन कैन लीड conflicts.
Hello, ma'am.
This interaction.
Hello.
Yeah.
Will you please? No, you are audible. Will you please elaborate what is superego again?
Yes, superego is that what you have learned from your parents or from your family or society. वो आपको कहते हैं ना कि this thing is right, this is wrong, ये अच्छा है, ये बुरा है, and you always have to take the right path. This is morally good. That is your superego.
Okay.
Okay, which compels you कि आपको हमेशा अच्छी चीज ही करनी चाहिए and not the thing that you want. ईड कहता है कि यू शुड बी जो मुझे चाहिए मुझे फटाफट अभी के अभी मिल जाए. सुपर ईगो कहता है कि आई डोंट केयर बट यू जस्ट हैव टू स्टिक बाय द मॉरल प्रिंसिपल्स. यू हैव टू डू व्हाट इज राइट, व्हाट इज गुड फॉर ऑल. दैट्स योर सुपर ईगो. इज दैट क्लियर?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, perfect. So ego is the referee. And I told you this is dynamic. The three of these interact, and sometimes this interaction can lead to conflicts. और जब वो conflicts unresolved रह जाते हैं, तब हमें जो है एक person के अंदर abnormal behavior आ जाता है. He starts behaving deviant from the normal and he starts behaving abnormally. Okay. So yes, this is what Freud talk about. Freud ने जो factor दिया है, Freud ने जो reason है psychodynamic theory कि how is abnormal behavior, how does that work. Next one is behavioral model. So behavioral model, we all have heard about Pavlov, Skinner, है ना. एंड दिस इज वेरी प्रेटी मच प्रेवलेंट मॉडल. हमने जब साइकोलॉजी की डेफिनेशन भी करी थी, मैंने आपको सबको बताया था कि हम सोल से शुरू हुए थे, हम कॉन्शियसनेस पे आए, है ना, माइंड, सोल, कॉन्शियस, एंड देन अल्टीमेटली इवेंचुअली वी केम टू बिहेवियरल मॉडल. एंड बिहेवियरल मॉडल भी सिर्फ फिर ऑब्वर्ट की ही बात कर रहा था कि जो बिहेवियर विजिबल है वही बिहेवियर जो है साइकोलॉजी के डोमेन में आता है. Now in this also simply behavioral model, how does this try to explain what is abnormal behavior? It says कि there are three types of learning. It says all behavior is learned. जो कुछ भी आप बिहेव करते हो वो सारा कुछ आपने सीखा हुआ है. There is nothing like genetic or something like that. This is behavioral models. So everything that you study in psychology is a perspective. Okay, and when you see psychology as a whole, when you become psychologist, you have to take up every perspective in consideration, but you don't have to narrow down yourself to that particular perspective. तो फ्रॉइड ने जो बोला, बिहेवियरल मॉडल ने बोला, वो बिहेवियरल मॉडल के अकॉर्डिंग ठीक था. But when you start practicing as a psychologist, so you have to take every model in consideration. Ab, it's already 9. Shall I continue? Should we finish this up?
Continue.
Yes, ma'am. Continue this slide.
Okay, all right. So yes, behavioral model, what it says is कि every behavior is learned. So there are 3 types of learning. Okay, अगर आपने learning का chapter already पता है, तो आपने पढ़ा हुआ है, they must already be knowing this. Have you started learning in +1? Yes or no? ये बताओ, आपने learning पढ़ा हुआ है पहले?
Yes, ma'am. We have learned.
Okay, still I'll brief you about it. तो अगर आपने पढ़ा, आपको पता होगा कौन सी theories है learning की?
Yes, classical conditioning, then open conditioning.
Right, and social learning.
Yes, social
ठीक
learning.
है. So yes, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and social learning. So
Social learning.
just for knowledge, I'm telling you, in this chapter they have not mentioned.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
No, we are not able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am, but it's breaking your voice.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am, if we could join it again, like the session.
You want me to join again? Now, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Alright. So there are 3 types. There is classical conditioning, there is operant, and there is social. Telling the names of the people who have given this theory. So I'll not go into very depth of everything, because these are theories themselves. They are very. So how about we continue in the next session? If it is okay.
I think it will be better to continue in the next session.
Should we continue this in the next session? What about others?
Yes, ma'am. We'll continue the next lecture.
Because I want you to get a good idea of things, so I don't want to rush with the things.
Your voice is
आपको
breaking.
समझ आना चाहिए.
Ma'am, I'm
Okay, all right.
audible. What's your face?
We'll meet in the next session then. All right.
Okay. No issue, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night. Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.